The Grand Oak Hotel stood tall among the bustling streets of the city, its facade a blend of old-world charm and modern elegance. Inside, the lobby was alive with the sounds of guests chatting and the soft clinking of glasses from the bar. Among those guests was a man named David Turner, a distinguished figure dressed in a sharp navy suit. He approached the front desk with an air of confidence. "Good evening, I have a reservation," he said, his voice smooth like velvet. The receptionist, a young woman named Clara, looked up, her smile fading just a bit. She scanned her screen, her brow furrowing as she found his name. "I'm sorry, Mr. Turner, it looks like your reservation has been." David's heart sank, cancelled. His calm demeanor began to crack. Clara glanced nervously at a supervisor. "There might have been a mistake, but excuse me," he interrupted. His tone was now tinged with frustration. "I understand, but we're fully booked." "I can help you find another hotel nearby," Clara offered, her voice steady but a hint of regret in her eyes. David looked around, noticing other guests enjoying their stay. He could feel the weight of rejection pressing down on him. "That's not what I need." He ran a hand through his hair, trying to keep his emotions in check. Clara could sense the urgency in his voice, but the hotel's policy was strict. Just as he was about to argue further, the bellhop walked over, pushing a cart stacked with luggage. He paused, raising an eyebrow at the scene unfolding. The bellhop asked, his tone casual but authoritative. "Just a misunderstanding," David replied, though a flicker of hope sparked in his chest. Perhaps this man could help him. The bellhop turned to Clara. "Isn't Mr.?" His gaze returned to David, a hint of recognition crossing his face. The way he spoke cut through the tension in the air, shifting the atmosphere instantly. Clara's eyes widened, her earlier dismay replaced by confusion. She echoed, glancing between the two men. David stood straighter, his heart racing. "Yes, I'm a judge," he admitted, but he could hear the quiver in his own voice. The weight of his role felt both heavy and inexplicably empowering. Clara seemed to process the information, her demeanor changing entirely. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner." "I didn't realize." The bellhop stepped in, his confidence radiating as he leaned closer to Clara. "I believe we could arrange for Mr." His expression brooked no argument. Clara's fingers danced across her keyboard. Her fingers paused midair. "Here it is. I'm so sorry about the confusion, Mr. Turner." David felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you," he murmured, appreciating the sudden change in tone, the way the bellhop's intervention had shifted everything. As Clara handed him the room key, the bellhop clapped David on the shoulder. "Enjoy your stay, Your Honor, and don't forget the gala." The moment felt significant, the air charged with unspoken words. As David made his way to the elevator, he felt the gaze of several other guests follow him. He was aware of his title, how it defined him, but there was a familiarity in the moment that let him know he was still just a man trying to navigate through life. Inside his suite, he breathed deeply, allowing himself to finally relax. The room was luxurious, filled with understated elegance. He ran a hand along the cool hardwood table, feeling the craftsmanship beneath his fingers. But even as he took in the surroundings, his mind drifted to the gala that awaited him. The importance of the event ignited a nervous energy in him. For weeks, he had prepared for this moment. An event meant to raise funds for the community, a chance for him to support causes he believed in. Yet underlying that was a deep fear of failure, of not living up to the expectations others placed on him. The weight of his title felt heavier than ever. David stepped into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. Looking in the mirror, he saw the reflection of a man with responsibilities, but also a man who craved connection. In his role as a judge, he dealt with the law daily, but there were moments when he wished for simpler interactions. Moments where he could just be David. Just then, a knock at the door broke his reverie. The bellhop appeared again, this time with a small cart. "Your Honor, I wanted to bring you some refreshments before the gala," he explained with an easy smile. David welcomed him in, intrigued. "Thank you." The bellhop set down the cart, revealing an array of hors d'oeuvres and a bottle of sparkling water. "It's my pleasure." As they stood there, David couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with this young man. "Josh," he replied, glancing around as if making sure they weren't overheard. "And I've got to admit, I'm a little starstruck." "Starstruck? I'm just doing my job," David replied, laughing a little. Josh grinned, leaning against the counter. "Regular or not, the community looks up to you. You have the power to make decisions that change lives." David met his gaze and felt a flicker of pride. "It's not always easy," he confessed. "Pressure builds character," Josh said wisely, a sparkle in his eye. "You know, it's the weight of expectations that can either break us or make us stronger." David thought about that for a moment. "You're right, Josh." There was something refreshing about this young man, a reminder that the weight of responsibility did not have to be carried alone. After sharing a few more words, Josh excused himself to let David prepare for the evening ahead. As David closed the door, he felt a surge of gratitude. Sometimes the most profound connections came from unexpected places. A short while later, David adjusted his tie in the mirror, the sparkle of the gala lighting dimly visible through his window. He was struck by the excitement bubbling inside him. Maybe tonight could be more than just another event. It could be an opportunity to connect, to inspire, and even to be inspired. As he stepped into the elevator, memories of his early days in the courtroom flashed through his mind. He remembered how overwhelmed he felt back then, stepping into a world where every decision mattered. He often felt alone in his high-stakes role, but moments like this reminded him of why he chose this path. When he arrived at the gala, the ballroom was buzzing with energy. The scent of gourmet food wafted through the air, and the laughter of attendees filled the space. David took a deep breath, allowing the warmth of collective joy to envelop him. As he moved through the crowd, he smiled and exchanged pleasantries, but there was one face he searched for, the familiar face of Clara. He found her near the bar, speaking with an older gentleman. Their eyes met, and she smiled brightly at him. Suddenly, the earlier tension melted away. "Mr. Turner, thank you for your help earlier," he replied, stepping closer. Clara's cheeks flushed slightly, the moment feeling intimate among the grand surroundings. "I really didn't know who I was dealing with." David felt a connection spark between them, a shared understanding that transcended their typical interactions. "You keep this place running smoothly," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. David turned to see the mayor approaching him, a wide smile spread across his face. The shift was almost instantaneous. David felt the pull of his responsibilities again, the importance of his position refreshing the pressure that had momentarily slipped away. He composed himself, ready to embrace the role he had to play. As he took the stage, he glanced down into the audience, spotting Josh standing near the back, his thumbs up in a gesture of support. A wave of warmth filled David's chest. This was the moment where all the hard work was intended to shine. He took a deep breath, speaking into the microphone, his voice clear and steady. He began, feeling a sense of unity buzz through the crowd, the stakes becoming more than just personal but collective. For every face he saw, he felt the connectedness. These were lives he could touch, futures he could influence. As he spoke about the community, the challenges they faced, and the opportunities that lay ahead, David felt an awakening within himself. With each word, he felt lighter, the pressure slowly shifting into purpose. This was why he chose to serve. This was where he could make a difference. The evening unfolded beautifully, filled with laughter, stories, and shared ambitions for a brighter future. Through it all, the support of familiar faces reminded him he was never alone in this journey. Clara's warm smiles, Josh's encouraging gestures, all reinforced how interconnected their lives truly were. Finally, as the night came to close, David stepped back, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. He had faced challenges, not just in the courtroom, but as a person trying to navigate the intricate fabric of life. And in that grand hotel, amidst uncertain reservations and unexpected friendships, he found strength in connections he hadn't anticipated. So when the bellhop, with that same casual demeanor, greeted him once more, David nodded appreciatively. "Thank you, Josh, for being a part of this," he said, the sincerity lacing his words. "As long as you're here, Your Honor, you'll always find a way," Josh replied with a cheeky grin. And in that moment, David knew he would carry that truth with him, a reminder of the power each person held to uplift another. Life's complex puzzle often revealed itself in the simplest of gestures, the most unexpected of moments. The story was just beginning. The Grand Summit Hotel loomed like a castle in the heart of the city, its grand entrance beckoning travelers from near and far. On a rainy Friday night, as the droplets raced down the polished windows, a man named David Turner stood at the front desk, his heart beating erratically. He could feel the warmth of the lobby wash over him, but the chill of worry gripped his chest. "I'm sorry, sir," the receptionist, a young woman named Clara, said, her voice steady but kind. David felt the air leave his lungs, the world around him spinning. "Cancelled? That doesn't make any sense." With a deliberate calmness, Clara glanced at her computer screen. "It appears there was a mix-up. The hotel is fully booked tonight." His voice was sharper than intended, cutting through the ambient sounds of the lobby. He hesitated, then lowered his tone. "I need this room." Clara's eyes softened with sympathy. Feeling the weight of defeat closing in, David turned, his mind racing. What was he going to do? The night felt heavy with uncertainty, and he could already feel the pressure of the meeting closing in like a storm cloud ready to burst. Just then, the bellhop, a tall young man with a bright smile, approached. He had been rolling a cart laden with luggage and stopped to assess the situation. David's shoulders slumped. "Not really." The bellhop raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "You're not just any guest, are you?" "David Turner," he replied, the weight of his name echoing against the polished marble floor. The bellhop's expression changed, like flipping a switch. "Ah, Your Honor, I didn't realize." The way he spoke transformed everything, making David stand taller, if only for a moment. Clara's demeanor shifted immediately, her hands flying across the keyboard with renewed urgency. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner." David felt a rush inside, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. The bellhop looked at David, a knowing smile on his face as if he understood the weight of the moment. "Just hang tight, Your Honor," he said as Clara continued typing. Moments stretched like elastic, thick with tension and anticipation. David felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety. They were expecting him at the charity gala tonight, a significant event where he would be recognized for his years of service. but the stakes felt higher than just social obligations. For David, it served as a reminder of his elevated responsibilities, how decisions he made could change lives forever. Clara finally looked up, her expression transformed. "We've got a suite available for you, Mr. Turner." Relief washed over him, and he felt like he could breathe again. Took the key, the bellhop leaned in closer. "Enjoy your stay, Your Honor, and good luck at the gala." The gravity in the bellhop's words struck home. David nodded, feeling a rush of gratitude. It was a simple acknowledgement, but it anchored him in a way he didn't expect. Entering the suite, he marveled at its elegance. The soft glow of city lights seeped through the curtains, painting the room in hues of gold and navy. He dropped his bag on the plush carpet and took a moment to collect himself. The gala loomed like a tide just waiting to sweep him away. It was a chance to reconnect with the community, but also a window into the expectations pushed upon him. The past year had been grueling, with cases weighing heavily on his conscience. Each ruling felt like a thread in a complex tapestry of lives, and the fear of missteps haunted him. As he splashed cold water on his face, he caught a reflection of himself in the bathroom mirror. The sharply defined lines of a worried man stared back. "You've got this," he whispered, more for himself than for any audience he might face later. With a final deep breath, David dressed in his finest suit, feeling the fabric hug his shoulders. All at once, he was ready. When he arrived at the gala, the atmosphere was electric. The ballroom was adorned with flowers and twinkling lights, laughter and clinking glasses creating a symphony of celebration. Yet amidst it all, David felt the familiar swirl of anxiety in his gut. He scanned the room, spotting Clara amid the crowd, helping to serve drinks. She caught his eye, a bright smile breaking across her face. "Mister," she called, waving him over. He approached her, feeling the warmth of her recognition. "Thank you for your help earlier. It's no problem." "Happy you made it." Her eyes sparkled with sincerity. David chuckled softly, but his heart raced. "I'm just one person in a sea of many." "True," Clara replied, glancing around as if weighing the crowd, "but you also have the chance to inspire." Her words resonated with him, shaking loose some of the anxiety tightening around his chest. Perhaps tonight wasn't just about meeting expectations. It was also a chance to connect, to share stories, and to lend voice to the community he served. As the night unfolded, speakers shared anecdotes, laughter erupted from various corners, and David embraced the underlying current of hope that ran through the gathering. With each conversation, he began to feel the real meaning of this evening wash over him. Just as he found himself loosening up, an older gentleman approached him, extending his hand. "Your Honor, thank you for attending." "Thank you for the kind words," David said, shaking the man's hand. The discussions flowed easily, and the connection among attendees deepened. David began to find his stride, his earlier nerves fading into the background. Then, in the middle of a conversation with an impassioned young woman about juvenile justice, David caught a glimpse of the bellhop, Josh, standing along the periphery. He hadn't expected to see him here. The boy's demeanor was different now. He looked confident, watching the scene unfold with an approving nod. Josh met David's gaze, and the brief connection reignited that flicker of determination in David's chest. It wasn't just about him. It was about the impact he could make, the change he could inspire. As the night wore on, David found himself stepping up, engaging in discussions that ignited his passion. He spoke to a group of young attorneys eager for guidance, sharing experiences that felt like threads connecting them to the future. In those moments, the weight he had felt earlier began to shift, evolving into something more buoyant hope. With each word, David felt the atmosphere change around him. Conversations sparked like fireworks, illuminating bright ideas and aspirations. The gala wasn't just a formality, it was a dynamic exchange of dreams and purpose. Yet amidst this buoyancy, David found himself reminiscing about the path that had led him here. Faces from the courtroom swirled through his mind: victims, offenders, families torn apart by choices and circumstances. He made decisions that had not always sat well with him, and the burden of those choices weighed on his heart even in moments of celebration. During one of his breakaway conversations with Clara, he took a breath, trying to navigate through those feelings. "You know, sometimes it feels like I'm treading water. Making the right choice can feel so heavy," he confessed, his voice low. Clara leaned in closer, her almond eyes filled with understanding. "It's supposed to feel heavy. It means you care, but don't forget that you're also a source of hope." Her words struck a chord, resonating deep. "Maybe it's not just about me," he said slowly. "It's about the people I serve." Clara encouraged, "You inspire them just by being here." As the night drew to a close, a sense of community hung palpable in the air. David took a moment, stepping outside onto a small balcony. Cityscape twinkled under the stars, wrapped in a soft embrace of night. He felt freer here, the breeze brushing against him like a gentle reminder of who he was beneath the suit, beneath the title. In that brief solitude, he realized that being Your Honor didn't define him fully. It was merely part of his story, not the whole narrative. Lost in thought, David heard footsteps behind him. Josh had come to join him. "You did great tonight, Your Honor," he said, leaning casually against the railing. "Thanks, Josh, I appreciate your support," David replied, smiling at the bellhop's genuine enthusiasm. Just speaking the truth, Josh replied. You've got a power most people don't see. You connect with people not just in the courtroom, but here too. David nodded, transformative realizations swirling in his mind. Josh beamed, his passion infectious. Suddenly, the gala floor buzzed with excitement as the mayor beckoned for speeches. David stepped back with Josh, feeling the energy flow back to the center of the room. Everyone gathered again, faces illuminated by the warmth of purpose and aspiration. As the mayor called for attention, David's heart swelled. He realized tonight wasn't an isolated affair. It was a collective dream shared by many who believed in a better future. He could see it in the eyes of the young lawyers, the laughter of families, and even in Clara's reassuring gaze. As the speeches kicked off, David found himself filled with newfound passion. Each speaker's words resonated, igniting his sense of responsibility to his community, reminding him that leadership was not a burden but a privilege. The room pulsed with energy, alive with hope and commitment. David felt it seep into his bones, transforming him from within. He didn't just carry the weight of the title, he carried the dreams of those who looked to him for guidance, those whose lives intertwined with his own. That evening marked more than just a gala, it marked a turning point for David. It was a promise to be the leader his community needed, to lift burdens and to embrace the connection between the law and the heart. And standing alongside Josh, he knew he wouldn't walk alone. This night was more than a memory. It was the beginning of a journey that intertwined lives, ambitions, and destinies. And for David, it felt exhilarating to be part of something larger. Each decision made from here on out would be held not just by him, but by a community united in purpose. It was a stormy evening in the city, the kind where the rain pounded against the pavement like a drumbeat thundering in the dark. David Turner hustled through the doors of the Grand Oak Hotel, drenched but determined. He approached the front desk, his heart racing not just from the cold, but from the weight of what lay ahead. He had an important meeting in the morning, and this was supposed to be the calm before the storm. Yet as he approached, he sensed the tension radiating off the receptionist, Clara. "Good evening, I have a reservation," David said, forcing a smile through the lingering anxiety. Clara's eyes flicked to her screen, then back at him. "I'm sorry, sir." David felt ice water cascade through his veins. "Cancelled." "That doesn't make any sense. I understand, but we're fully booked tonight," she replied, her tone merging professionalism with an undercurrent of empathy. "Other hotels, I need this room," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I have a critical meeting in the morning." She looked genuinely pained, but there was nothing she could do. "I'm really sorry, but the system has no record of your reservation." David opened his mouth, ready to argue, but a sudden thought brought him up short. This was not just about a room, this was about reputation, his career, the weight of expectations. In a split second, he weighed his options. Then he spotted a bellhop nearby, a tall young man with a confident stride pushing a cart filled with luggage. David called out, waving the bellhop over. The bellhop approached with an easy smile, professionally polished but relaxed, a gleam of curiosity in his eyes. David glanced at Clara and then at the bellhop. "No," he said, his frustration bubbling over. "My reservation was canceled." The bellhop asked, his tone casual yet attentive. "David Turner," he replied, the weight of his name feeling like both a gift and a burden. As an esteemed judge, he felt the eyes on him wherever he went. The bellhop's expression shifted in an instant. "Hold on a sec," the bellhop said, his demeanor transforming. "Your Honor." The normalcy of the bellhop's tone seemed to flip the reality of the moment, like turning a page in a dense book to find a hidden treasure. Clara's eyes widened, confusion and embarrassment flooding her features. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner," David asked, the energy in the air crackling like electricity. A sense of hope surged through him, igniting something that had felt dormant in the face of the day's challenges. "Absolutely," the bellhop said, pushing Clara aside gently, as though the very act of acknowledging David's title gave him renewed vigor. Clara, now visibly flustered, began rapidly typing. With the shift in Clara's energy came a palpable sense of relief. David felt empowered, as if he were suddenly elevated, not just above the situation, but above his own doubts. It was amazing how a simple title could alter perception, shifting how people responded to him. Moments later, Clara looked up, her face now warm with genuine apology. "We have a suite for you, Your Honor." "Thank you," David said kindly. The bellhop smiled, nodding his approval. "Enjoy your stay, Your Honor." David couldn't help but feel the weight of that title settle on his shoulders like a cape. It was both a burden and a badge of honor, yet in this moment it transformed his reality. He took the key, feeling both grateful and a little exhilarated. In the suite, he marveled at the luxurious surroundings, crisp white linens, a sprawling view of the city skyline that seemed to shimmer in the rain-soaked night. He tossed his bag onto the plush bed and took a moment to breathe deeply, savoring the luxury. But even as he sank into the comfort of the room, thoughts of the impending meeting flooded back. The weight of his responsibilities tugged at him. Every ruling he made had real consequences. It wasn't just paperwork. He was aware of the lives behind every case he faced. This meeting was crucial. The community needed him to lead effectively. After washing away the remnants of the storm, David stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring hard at the reflection that stared back. "You can do this," he murmured to himself, the resolute tone in his voice wavering slightly. He dressed for the evening gala that was part of the gathering, adjusting his tie as he caught his breath. This wasn't just about him, it was about the impact he could make. Taking a moment, he felt the importance of the night's purpose settling into his bones, readying him for what lay ahead. He glanced at his watch. The gala was about to begin. Stepping into the ballroom was like entering another world. The chandeliers glittered like stars, casting a warm glow over elegantly dressed guests connecting over drinks and laughter. David felt both out of place and at home, the dichotomy of emotions crashing over him like waves. Then he spotted Clara again, this time all dressed up as she moved gracefully between tables, her cheeks flushed with the buzz of the event. "Mr. Turner," she said, drawing closer. "I wouldn't have missed it," he replied heartily. There was something about her presence that re-energized him, a reminder of the team effort involved in serving the community. "You were fantastic during the reception. I couldn't believe how everyone looked at you. There's something about your position that commands attention," she remarked, her eyes glimmering with admiration. He chuckled, shaking his head slightly. "It's more complicated than that. Don't forget the positive difference you make. People look up to you," Clara said warmly. Her sincerity pierced through the worries weighing him down and stirred something within him. They spoke a while longer, and he could sense that Clara didn't just see the title. She acknowledged David, the man beneath. Somehow that recognition transported him back to why he chose this path in the first place. Just as they were sharing laughs, the mayor stepped onto the stage, the room buzzing with eager anticipation. David's heart raced as the spotlight turned onto him. With a knowing glance, Clara squeezed his hand and retreated to attend to her duties. The mayor began to speak, welcoming everyone and outlining the evening's agenda. As he stood there under the glaring lights, David found himself reflecting on his journey, from the courtroom to this very moment, an intricate tapestry woven together by sacrifices, struggles, and triumphs. As the evening unfolded, many shared their stories of resilience, hopes, and dreams. David began to engage more, stepping into conversations with confidence. An idea emerged in his mind: it was the connections, not just the cases, that fueled his passion. Each shared experience created threads that would bind them together in their quest for justice and change. He moved from group to group, each interaction feeding his sense of purpose. The faces he saw reflected the community he held dear, filled with hope, ambition, and vulnerability. He wanted to do better, to inspire not just with words but with action. Then there came a moment when he caught Josh's eye across the room. The bellhop stood quietly near the bar, his presence a grounding force amid the whirl of the gala. David waved, and Josh grinned back enthusiastically. Josh called out, his voice cutting through the laughter and chatter. David chuckled, and an unexpected warmth flooded through him. "You're right." As the night continued, David found himself wanting to share the lessons gathered over the years, the realities of the law, the struggles of those who often felt voiceless, the importance of community. The conversations flowed effortlessly, weaving paths that would surely carry into the next day and beyond. What was intended as a night of celebration transformed into something more, a gathering of courage and a chorus of voices committed to change. Then came the crucial moment. As the mayor introduced him to share a few words, David took a deep breath. Standing before a crowd that represented so much of what he fought for, he felt the gravity of his role. "Thank you everyone for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady and clear. Each word felt infused with purpose, a chance to inspire those around him. He spoke about justice, not just in the courtroom, but in the community. He evoked the importance of empathy and connection, urging everyone to support one another in the face of adversity. The room hung on his every word, and he lost himself in the conviction of his message. It was not a performance, but a call to action, a chance to truly connect with those who looked to him for guidance. When he stepped down from the podium, applause rang through the air, a tide of appreciation washing over him. He met Clara's eyes again, and she gave him an encouraging nod. In that moment, he felt a rush of gratitude for the support surrounding him, for the people who believed in him despite his doubts. The night continued, laughter and discussions rippling through the room. David found his way back to where Josh stood, leaning casually against the bar. "That was amazing, Your Honor," he said, admiration painting his tone. "Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you being here. You made a difference tonight," David replied, feeling the camaraderie between them deepen. "There's something powerful about seeing everyone come together," Josh said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. As the evening wound down, David took a moment to look around. So many faces, each with their own story, their hopes, their struggles. They weren't just his responsibility, they were part of his journey. In that moment of realization, David understood that titles come with weight, but they also bring the opportunity to uplift. It became clear that each interaction forged a path not just for him, but for all those connected through hope and purpose. As the rain softened outside and the evening came to a close, David Turner stood taller, feeling both the weight of his role and the lightness of community. It was a night marked by resilience, connection, and courage. A night that reminded him that he wasn't just David Turner, judge. He was David Turner, a member of a community ready to rise together. And that, above all, was where the true strength lay. The rain poured down in sheets, slicking the streets of the city like a glass surface. Inside the Grand Oak Hotel, the lobby was a sanctuary of warmth and chatter, but David Turner felt anything but cozy. He stepped through the revolving doors, shaking off droplets like an anxious dog. He approached the front desk, hoping to find refuge from the storm and a moment's peace before his important meeting the next morning. "Good evening, sir," asked the receptionist, Clara, her voice warm but slightly distracted as she tapped away at her computer. "I have a reservation," David replied, projecting confidence despite the uneasy flutter in his stomach. She turned her full attention to the screen. The smile faded from her face, replaced by a look of concern. "I'm sorry, Mr. David," felt his heart drop, much like the rain hammering against the windows. "Cancelled, that can't be right. I understand, but our system shows it was cancelled." His mind raced, grappling with disbelief and frustration. "I need this room." Clara exchanged a glance with her supervisor, who stood nearby, arms crossed. "I can help you look for another place." "No," he interrupted, desperation creeping into his voice. "You don't understand." Just then, a tall bellhop appeared, wheeling a cart filled with luggage. He paused, noticing the tension in the air. His voice was calm and confident, cutting through the panic. "My reservation has been cancelled," David said, fumbling for a glimmer of hope. The bellhop raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "David Turner," he replied, sensing that his name held some power but unsure how to wield it in this moment. The bellhop's eyes widened. "Hold on a second, Your Honor." The name rang out like a bell, altering the entire atmosphere in the lobby. Clara's demeanor shifted dramatically, filled with both surprise and urgency. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner." David could feel the weight lift from his shoulders. How quickly everything changed with just a title, a label. It was astounding how perception shifted, altering the dynamics in less than a heartbeat. The bellhop leaned closer to Clara, his tone assertive yet respectful. "Can we get him a room?" "Yes, of course." Clara's fingers danced over the keyboard, fury giving way to determination as she worked to rectify the flub. "We have a suite available." "Thank you," David said, gratitude flooding his voice as he accepted the key from Clara's outstretched hand. The air buzzed with newfound energy. It felt good to be recognized, to be seen. "Enjoy your stay, Your Honor," the bellhop said, nodding at David as if they were old friends, part of a secret club. David felt a swell of pride. It was a reminder that titles could open doors, they could forge connections. As David entered the suite, he marveled at the elegant decor, the soft lighting, the plush furnishings, and the breathtaking view of the stormy skyline. He let out a long breath, feeling the pulse of gratitude running through him. But beneath that gratitude lay the gnawing worry of the meeting ahead. Tomorrow he would sit in a room with community leaders, discussing issues that impacted lives, decisions that weighed heavily on him. Each ruling he issued shaped futures, and the pressure weighed on him like a dark cloak. David stepped into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. He stared at his reflection, searching for resolve. "You can do this," he whispered to himself. Somewhere in there he needed to tap into the confidence that came with the title. Dressing carefully, he selected his finest suit. Tonight was important not just for him, but for the community he served. He needed to be sharp, present, and ready to inspire. As he left the suite, he felt a flicker of nervous energy coursing through him. He could hear laughter and music flow through the hotel like a heartbeat, pulling him towards the gala celebrating achievements in the community. When he arrived at the ballroom, he was met with a kaleidoscope of faces, everyone dressed to impress, mingling amid the elegant decor. The sound of glasses clinking and laughter filled the space with warmth. David took it all in but soon found himself on the periphery, watching from the edges as eager conversations unfolded. Then he noticed Clara across the room, a glimmer of recognition flickering between them. She caught his eye and waved, her smile bright. "Mr." she called, weaving through the crowd toward him. He replied, feeling an unexpected slice of joy at seeing her. "I'm so glad you're here. You're a beacon of hope for us. Everyone is excited to see you," she said, her warmth wrapping around him like a hug. David chuckled lightly, though the weight of that characterization didn't escape him. "But you can do it," she said firmly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that sent a rush through him. "People look up to you." Her words resonated deeply, like a reassuring echo. Perhaps more than anything, tonight could be a chance not only to speak but to listen, to connect more meaningfully with those who look to him for guidance. As conversations swirled around him, David made his way through the crowd. He found himself engaged in discussions, sharing ideas and stories with familiar faces. The atmosphere became a living tapestry of dreams, fears, hopes, and laughter. Each encounter reminded him why he chose to follow this path. In the midst of a passionate conversation about juvenile justice, the mayor stepped up to the podium, the room hushed in anticipation. David shifted, abuzz with both excitement and nerves. The mayor called out, spotting David in the crowd. David's pulse quickened as all eyes turned toward him. He made his way to the front, the moment stretching in delicious anticipation. Standing beneath the soft glow of the lights, he focused on the faces before him. Each person carried a piece of the city's soul. He took a deep breath and shared his vision. He spoke not just about the law but about compassion, understanding the people behind the cases he encountered. He could see the flickers of recognition and understanding dance through the crowd. They too were part of this journey. Each word felt like a thread woven into the evening, connecting him to the people who looked to him for leadership. In that moment, he became not just a judge but a community leader, a friend. As he stepped down, applause erupted, washing over him like warmth on a winter's day. Clara flashed him a proud smile from the crowd, and he felt a swell of gratitude for her belief in him. The connection they shared reminded him that he wasn't alone in this journey. Afterward, he mingled more freely, laughing, connecting, and sharing hopes for a brighter future with others who were equally passionate. The ballroom became a tapestry of conversations, laughter ringing through the air, a reminder that they were a community alive and thriving together. Time passed, the gala flowing like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Just as he began to drift into a comfortable groove, he spotted Josh again, the bellhop leaning casually against the bar, a knowing smile on his face. David appreciated the young man's support throughout the evening. "Impressive speech, Your Honor," Josh called out, his voice cutting through the sea of chatter. "Thanks, Josh, I appreciate your encouragement," David replied, feeling a growing bond between them. "You know, you bring a powerful energy into this room," Josh continued, his expression earnest. "People feel it." David pondered this, appreciating the truth behind Josh's words. Had he really recognized the significance of his presence? In the courtroom, it's easy to feel alone among all the decisions and justifications. "Exactly, it's all about connection," Josh said, his voice filled with conviction. As the evening progressed, David found himself submerged in conversations about justice, community, and hopes for the future. The atmosphere felt electric, a shared spark igniting discussions that mattered. He moved from table to table, engaging with people from various walks of life. Each conversation unfurled like a flower opening towards the sun, vulnerable, honest, and profoundly human. It became clear that these interactions fueled him, lighting a fire of purpose he had nearly forgotten. Yet even amidst the laughter and joy, his thoughts drifted back to the trials he faced daily. The weight of his title didn't only come with respect, but also responsibility. Every day in court had taught him that justice wasn't just a concept, it was a living force that impacted lives. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder, a comforting presence. Clara had returned. "There's someone here who needs to talk to you," she said softly, her eyes searching his. He asked, curious, "A family that has been affected by the justice system." David felt a knot of apprehension tighten in his stomach. This was both a privilege and a burden. "I'm ready," he said, his heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and concern. Clara led him to a small table tucked away in the corner. A woman sat there, her face etched with worry, her eyes red-rimmed. Next to her was a teenage boy, his expression stoic but filled with unspoken emotion. "This is Sarah and her son, Jason," Clara introduced gently. "Thank you for meeting with us," Sarah said, her voice trembling. David took a seat across from them, his heart heavy as he listened. They recounted their struggles with the justice system, the fear, the anxiety, the times they felt invisible. Their voices cracked with emotion as they shared how decisions made in court had changed their lives. David felt the gravity of their story wash over him. This wasn't just data, these were real lives with real consequences. The clamor of the gala faded into the background as he focused entirely on their words. "I just want my son to have a chance," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. David felt a familiar sense of duty grip him tightly, reminding him of the importance of his role. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady but filled with compassion. Jason, who had been listening closely, finally spoke up. "All I want is to be treated like everyone else." The sincerity in his voice cut deep, and David nodded solemnly. "You matter, Jason, your story matters." For a moment, the three of them shared a connection that transcended the formalities of titles and positions. It was the simple exchange of humanity, the understanding that echoed through their hearts. As their conversation came to a close, David felt renewed, gaining a clearer focus on why he fought for justice in the first place. This wasn't just about the law, it was about empathy, hope, and lifting others when they felt lost. Returning to the gala floor, David found the energy buzzing again, but now he carried a deeper understanding. He wasn't just a judge, he was a steward of change. The voices he heard tonight, those stories, would resonate with him, driving him to fight harder for justice. As the evening wound down, he drifted back to where Josh stood, leaning against the bar again. Josh asked, a knowing look in his eyes. "It was powerful," David replied, feeling the weight of his words. "That's where the real change begins," Josh said, his voice filled with conviction. David smiled, a sense of warmth wrapping around him. "And you're not just a bellhop, Josh, you're part of this too." As they exchanged thoughts, David realized that the night had transformed him, opening his eyes not just to his responsibilities, but also to his community's potential. Through shared experiences, lives could weave together, crafting an intricate tapestry of purpose, resilience, and hope. As he took in the bustling crowd one last time, David felt something shift inside him. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, ready to lift others burdened by the weight of their circumstances. Walking away from the gala, he carried with him the belief that change was possible, and as the storm subsided outside, a sense of calm enveloped him. David Turner, the judge, had found his purpose rooted not just in titles, but in the connections he nurtured in his community. And it was in those connections that he discovered the true spirit of justice. The rain was relentless, hammering against the pavement as if the heavens themselves were weeping. David Turner stepped into the Grand Oak Hotel, shaking off droplets that clung to his navy suit. The lobby buzzed with life, yet he felt a nagging anxiety coiling in his stomach. He approached the front desk and offered a confident smile, though it barely masked the storm brewing inside him. "Good evening," he said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I have a reservation." The receptionist, Clara, looked up from her monitor, her expression shifting from one of politeness to concern. "I'm sorry, Mr. David's heart sank. Cancelled? How is that possible?" Clara glanced nervously at her supervisor. "I don't know what to say." His frustration bubbled over, yet he kept his tone calm. "I need this room. I have a critical meeting in the morning." "I understand, but the system shows it was cancelled." "I really can't do anything about it," Clara replied, her voice becoming almost apologetic. Just then, a bellhop appeared, wheeling a cart stacked high with luggage. He was tall and confident, a spark of energy radiating from him. He paused, assessing the situation. He asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. David turned to him, desperation creeping into his voice. "My reservation was cancelled." The bellhop raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "David Turner," he replied, sensing a flicker of authority attached to his title. But it felt distant, overshadowed by the present crisis. Moments later, the bellhop's expression changed. "Your Honor," the name echoed off the polished marble floors, altering the atmosphere around them. Clara's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and urgency flooding her face. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner." David felt something shift. Hope flickered like a candle in the dark, and he sensed the change in Clara's attitude. Just a title, yet it had already begun to work its magic. The bellhop leaned toward Clara, his presence instilling a sense of calm. Clara nodded quickly. David felt a rush of relief wash over him, relaxing a bit as he nodded his thanks. With swift movements, Clara typed furiously on her keyboard, and in no time she announced, "We have a suite available, Your Honor." "Thank you," he replied, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. The bellhop shot him a smile, as if they shared a secret bond, and in that moment David realized the power of perception. As David stepped into the suite, he took a deep breath, soaking in the elegance that surrounded him. The warm glow of the city lights filtered through the curtains, casting a soft illumination on the exquisite furnishings. He let the door close behind him and leaned against it for a moment, grateful that the night's chaos had settled. Yet even as he took in the luxurious surroundings, his mind drifted toward the meeting that awaited him. He felt burdened, aware that lives would be affected by the decisions made in that conference room the next day. The weight of expectation pushed down on him like a heavy fog. David splashed cold water on his face, gazing at the man in the mirror. "You've got this," he whispered, trying to conjure the confidence that often felt hard to grasp. But swirling in his mind were memories of the court faces of families hoping for justice, victims seeking closure, and the heavy toll of difficult decisions that loomed on his conscience. After putting on his finest suit, he felt more prepared but still anxious. Tonight was a gathering of influential community leaders, and he needed to show them that he was committed to making a difference, not just for appearances, but for every life that hung in the balance of his judgments. He walked toward the ballroom. He could hear the lively chatter and music spilling out into the hall. It felt like stepping into another world. The scene before him was one of sparkling lights, elegant dresses, and laughter that danced through the air like the melodies from the orchestra. Then he spotted Clara again, moving gracefully between tables with a tray of drinks. She caught his eye, flashing him a genuine smile that lifted his spirits. "Mister," she exclaimed as she approached, "I'm so glad you made it." David smiled back, feeling a warmth settle in. "Thank you for your help earlier. I'm just doing my job, but I've heard so much about you. You're a beacon of hope for this community," she said, her eyes bright with sincerity. A wave of emotion surged through David. The night unfolded, and he found himself mingling with familiar faces, sharing laughs and stories. The stress from earlier began to dissipate. Each conversation deepened his sense of connection, reminding him of why he chose this path in the first place. As the evening progressed, the mayor took the stage, welcoming everyone and outlining the purpose of the gala. He was enthusiastic, his words igniting a sense of unity in the room. "Let's extend our gratitude to the wonderful individuals committed to making a difference," he said, glancing in David's direction. The spotlight shifted to David, and his heart raced. Standing before the audience, he felt the gravity of their expectations weighing heavily on him. With each flicker of the camera, he recognized faces filled with hope. He took a breath, recalling the stories he had heard over the years, the families, the struggles, the triumphs. "Thank you, everyone," he began, his voice steady, though the nerves were palpable. As he spoke of justice, empathy, and the need for change, he saw the glimmers of connection in the audience's eyes. It was not about him, it was about all of them, united in purpose. He articulated the specifics of initiatives aimed at improving the lives of those they served, details that resonated as deeply as the emotions threading through the room. Justice is not simply about the law, it's about understanding the stories behind it. We must listen to one another and lift each other up, David urged passionately, finding his voice growing stronger with every word. As he concluded his speech, applause erupted, a tide of appreciation that wrapped around him like a warm embrace. He stepped down from the podium, humility cutting through the pride swelling in his chest. Clara beamed at him from the crowd, her eyes shining with admiration. Encouraged by the positive response, David continued to move about the ballroom, engaging more with those around him. He shared thoughts and experiences, swapping ideas and smiles, forming connections that felt vital. Each conversation turned into a thread woven into the larger fabric of community. Yet amidst all the joy, David recalled the weight he carried. The thought lingered like a shadow. He focused on each conversation like it was a lifeboat, every story a flicker of hope against the storm of reality. Then he saw Josh, the bellhop, leaning casually against the bar again. David walked over, feeling a surge of connection. "Hey there, I wanted to say thank you for helping out earlier." Josh looked pleased, his expression genuine. "That's what it's all about, Your Honor." David chuckled, feeling the sincerity in Josh's words. "It means a lot. Don't forget," Josh said, tilting his head. "You're not just a judge, you're someone who inspires others." David paused, reflecting on what Josh said. "You're right." As the gala continued, the noise around them pulsed with excitement. The atmosphere felt alive, vibrant with discussions of justice, change, and collective hope. David moved through the crowd, engaged with conversations that kindled his passion. But just as the energy seemed to peak, Clara reappeared, a look of urgency crossing her face. "There's someone who would like to speak with you," she said, glancing over her shoulder. Curiosity piqued, David followed her gaze to a table in the corner. A woman sat there, her eyes filled with sadness, worry etched across her face. Beside her was a young boy, his expression serious. "Thank you for coming," the woman said softly, her voice trembling as she met David's gaze. "I wanted to share our story with you." David felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He took a seat, the gravity of the moment pressing heavily on him. "I'm here to listen." As the woman began to recount their struggles with the justice system, each word felt like a blade piercing through the walls built around his heart. Jason, her son, had been caught in the web of circumstances that had spiraled out of control. In sharing their story, they revealed genuine pain and longing. "We just want to be heard, Your Honor," she said, her voice breaking. "We feel hopeless." Each word she spoke resonated with the weight of reality, the fear, the anxiety, and the overwhelming sense of invisibility. David leaned in, wholly engaged, attuned to the emotions shared across the small table. "I want you to know that your voices matter," he said, feeling the urgency of their pain. "I promise you that I will do my best to advocate for better understanding in our system." Moments stretched on as he listened deeply, the exchange transforming into something profoundly human. Every detail they shared etched itself into his heart, a reminder of the lives irrevocably affected by decisions rendered behind closed doors. When their conversation concluded, David felt a mixture of emotions swell inside him. The pain they expressed stayed with him, underscoring the importance of his role as a judge. He couldn't just see numbers and cases, he had to recognize the humanity in every interaction. Through it all, David sensed something shift within him. As he left their table, the buzz of the gala faded momentarily into the backdrop. He caught sight of Clara, her expression filled with encouragement. "It's moments like these that define who we are as leaders," she said softly, joining him as they moved back into the bustling crowd. As the evening drew to a close, he felt the positive energy return, fueled by community and connection. Each person he touched offered a reminder of the shared purpose they all held dear. With newfound clarity, David faced the rest of the night inspired. He wasn't just a judge wrestling with title, he was a vessel for change. Each conversation he participated in contributed to the greater narrative of justice, elevating ordinary lives. As he prepared to leave the gala, David paused by the door, the rain outside no longer feeling oppressive but rather cleansing, renewing. He felt grounded, aware of the light he could offer in the dark. The combined stories, the voices of the people, had tethered him to something far deeper than personal ambition. And in that moment he realized he could carry this connection with him, using not just laws but empathy to shape a brighter future for all. The echoes of their voices lingered in his mind, a promise he would keep. Your Honor was merely a title. What mattered most was the heart behind it. A gust of wind pushed open the heavy glass door of the Grand Oak Hotel, flinging raindrops into the elegant lobby. David Turner stepped inside, water drenching the cuffs of his trousers. He shook off what he could but felt a weight settling in. It had been a long day in the courtroom, and all he wanted was to unwind before an important meeting the next morning. He approached the front desk, squeezing the water from his hair with a frustrated sigh. "Good evening," said the receptionist, Clara, her smile barely reaching her eyes. "I have a reservation," David replied, a hint of urgency creeping into his voice. Clara's fingers raced across her keyboard, her brows furrowing as she scanned the screen. I'm sorry, mister, his heart plummeted. Cancelled? No, that can't be right. I understand, she said, her voice firm yet sympathetic, but the system shows it was indeed cancelled. David felt a wave of panic wash over him. I have to stay here. I can help you find another hotel if you'd like, Clara suggested, her tone the same as someone offering a consolation prize. No, that's not going to work. I can't afford to be late or risk losing credibility, he replied, frustration simmering just below the surface. Suddenly, a tall bellhop appeared, wheeling a cart overflowing with luggage. He observed the situation, eyes narrowing in curiosity. He asked, his voice steady and authoritative. My reservation has been cancelled, David stated, desperation creeping into his tone. The bellhop raised an eyebrow, his demeanor shifting from just an employee to something more engaged. David Turner, he answered, willing his exhaustion to fade away. As if a light bulb went off, the bellhop's upturned lips turned into a broad grin. Your Honor, the title hung in the air, causing a shift in energy that rippled through the lobby. Clara's expression morphed from one of indifference to surprise and urgency. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner. David felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. The bellhop's usage of the title had changed everything. Suddenly, he was no longer a frustrated customer. He was a figure of authority. That small shift felt monumental. Can we arrange for Mr. the bellhop asked, turning to Clara with a commanding presence. Yes, of course, please hang on, she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard with newfound determination. David watched the transformation unfold before his eyes, how the acknowledgement of his title seemed to weave through the atmosphere like magic. Moments later, Clara's face lit up. We have a suite available, Your Honor. Thank you, he said, relief flooding through him. The bellhop nodded, reassuring him with an understanding grin. Enjoy your stay, Your Honor, and good luck with your meeting tomorrow, the bellhop said, his tone firm yet supportive, as if they shared an unspoken camaraderie. As David stepped into the suite, he marveled at its elegance. The polished wood, soft lighting, and sweeping views of the city skyline felt like a haven from the chaos of the day. But even amidst the luxury, a knot of apprehension churned in his stomach. The meeting loomed over him like a heavy cloud, a weight he carried with every decision he made. He splashed water on his face, glancing at his reflection in the mirror. You've got this, he whispered, willing himself to believe. The pressure of tomorrow, where lives were entangled in decisions and judgments, felt overwhelming. Dressed in a crisp suit, he felt a flicker of confidence. Tonight was not just another gathering, it was a chance to shape the future of those he served. He made a promise to be the best judge he could be, and the stakes felt higher every day. Stepping into the ballroom, he was met with an atmosphere buzzing with life. Laughter, clinking glasses, and music surrounded him. The sight of well-dressed guests mingling, all sharing in something larger, felt intoxicating. Among the crowd, he spotted Clara again, her cheeks slightly flushed. Mister, she called out, navigating through the throng of people. I appreciate your understanding earlier, he said, returning her warm smile. I'm glad you're here. Your presence can inspire us all, she said, sincerity shining in her eyes. It touched something deep inside David, reminding him why he chose this path in the first place. As the evening progressed, the mayor took the stage, his demeanor brimming with enthusiasm. The spotlight turned toward David, and he felt his pulse quicken. Standing before the audience, he could see the faces full of hope and expectation. He had the power to connect, to reach out to everyone in the room. With a steady breath, he moved to the podium. Thank you for having me, he began, feeling the warmth of the crowd. As he spoke, he recounted tales from the courtroom, the complexities faced by families caught in the crosshairs of the law. There was a tangible connection forming in the room. People leaned in, hanging on his every word. With each sentence, he felt a deepening bond. Justice isn't just a word, it's a commitment we make to ourselves to strive for equality, to lift one another up, he said, the passion in his voice rising as he looked out into the crowd. David saw nods of agreement, and hope reflected back at him. As he finished his speech, applause erupted, a powerful wave that surged through the crowd, lifting him up. He stepped back from the podium, warmth enveloping him like a warm blanket on a cold night. The cheers filled him with purpose, reminding him of the impact he could have. Suddenly, David spotted Josh the bellhop near the bar, leaning casually against a railing with a relaxed smile. The camaraderie was palpable, and he felt an urge to connect with the young man who had played a role in shifting his night for the better. Josh called out, his enthusiasm radiating through the crowd. David chuckled, crossing the space until he stood beside him. Thank you. You brought everyone together just by being yourself. That's powerful, Josh replied, sincerity ringing in his voice. Small words but impactful, they resonated within David. Sometimes it gets heavy, but hearing that helps. The stories I hear every day linger with me. As he and Josh spoke, David noticed more guests gathering around, sharing their own stories, their hopes and dreams. The energy shifted from individual conversations into breaths of inspiration, as many began to bounce ideas off one another, proving the community was alive and thriving. As the night continued, David found himself pulled into conversations that felt more intimate than before. Families spoke of their lives, the struggles they faced, and how the justice system had impacted them. He engaged, listened, and offered heartfelt advice whenever he could. In that moment, he realized he was not just a figure in a suit, he was part of something much larger. Every story mattered, every person was valuable, and he had the responsibility to carry their voices in his heart as he moved forward. Just then, Clara joined them again, a bright smile illuminating her face. "You've had quite an impact tonight, Mr. Turner," she said, reaching out a hand. "Please call me David," he replied, feeling the sense of familiarity between them grow stronger. "David, then, you've really engaged with everyone." "I'm just doing my best," he said, his voice softening. "But the truth is, tonight has rejuvenated me." Moments turned into hours as the conversations swirled around them, laughter rising and falling like the tide. David felt lighter, almost untethered from the weight he so often carried. But then he noticed a family seated away from the festivities. They looked quiet, burdened by some unseen weight, their expressions heavy. It stirred something within him, and he turned to Clara. "That's the Chen family. They've been through a tough time," Clara replied, her voice low. David asked, feeling drawn to their plight. Clara nodded, her expression encouraging. David walked over to the family, his heart racing slightly. "Good evening, I'm David Turner," he said, offering a gentle smile. The mother, a woman with tired eyes, looked up, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. David gestured for them to relax. "Please go ahead." As they began to speak, the gravity of their situation enveloped the conversation. They had faced struggles with the legal system that left them feeling powerless, their voices silenced by bureaucratic walls. The weight of their uncertainties washed over David, pulling at his heartstrings. "I want you to know," he assured them, "that I care about your story." Each word sank deeper into his being. This wasn't just about a job, it was about human lives, futures intertwined in a complex web of decisions. The mother's tears spoke of relief, hope finally breaking through the facade of despair. "Thank you. Families like yours deserve to be heard," David said softly. When their conversation came to a close, the Chen family looked lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. It was a reminder that the most profound interactions often stem from shared stories, shared empathy. As David returned to the gala floor, he felt renewed. The strong emotions lingered within him, igniting a sense of urgency and responsibility. He was ready to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Spotting Josh again, he walked over, the connection they had built humming with energy. "You won't believe the conversation I just had," David said, his eyes wide with determination. Josh encouraged. "It was about families feeling unheard, about the very essence of justice. It reminded me of why I'm here," David spoke fervently. Josh exclaimed. As the night came to a close, David stood in the hallway, watching as the guests filtered out like fireflies into the night. The rain had finally ceased, leaving the streets glistening under the street lamps. He felt lighter, fueled by the connections formed and the lives touched. This was not merely an event, it was a moment of profound realization. He wasn't just a title, he was a part of a community woven together by the fabric of shared aspirations. As David stepped out of the hotel, he breathed deeply, the cool air filling his lungs. That night had been a journey, one that reaffirmed his commitment to justice, empathy, and the power of connection. Walking away from the Grand Oak Hotel, he could feel the voices of those he had met lingering in his mind, promises etched into his heart. Each step forward became a commitment, a vow to carry their stories through the corridors of justice. And in that moment, David Turner understood that to be called Your Honor was not merely an acknowledgement of position. It was a reminder of the responsibility he bore to uplift, inspire, and lead with compassion. In that confluence of law and humanity, he found his true purpose. The rain lashed down on the city streets like 1,000 tiny drummers, each drop echoing the urgency building in David Turner's chest. He pushed through the heavy glass doors of the Grand Oak Hotel, twisting his collar against the cold as he stepped into the warmth of the lobby. "Good evening," he said to the receptionist, Clara, his voice steady despite the swirling anxiety in his gut. "I have a reservation." Clara's smile withered as she glanced at her computer screen. "I'm sorry," Mr. David's heart plummeted. "Canceled, that can't be right. I understand, but the system shows it was canceled. Unfortunately, we're fully booked tonight," Clara explained, her eyes darting nervously between him and her supervisor, who had just approached. David felt frustration spilling over. "I can't just find another hotel, I have an important meeting in the morning." "I can attempt to find another place for you close by," Clara offered, but the placating tone only spurred David's irritation. "No," he snapped, feeling the world tightening around him. Just then, a bellhop rolled in, guiding a cart piled high with luggage. He paused, spotting the tension, and stepped closer. "My reservation was canceled," David said. The bellhop took a moment to assess the situation, then raised an eyebrow. "David Turner," he confessed, feeling a flicker of authority in those words, but it felt far away right now, lost in the turmoil of the moment. The bellhop's expression transformed instantly. "Your Honor," his voice had the clarity of a bell ringing, and suddenly the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Clara's face flickered between confusion and clarity. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner." David felt a spark ignite in his chest. Hope began to push aside the weight of frustration. The way the bellhop had addressed him changed everything. One title, and suddenly he was more than just a disgruntled guest. The bellhop asked Clara, stepping in with a commanding presence. Clara's fingers danced across the keyboard now, her earlier hesitations seemingly melted away. David stood a bit taller, feeling something shift in the room. Bellhop's acknowledgement of his title had transformed the energy around them, and he could see Clara's newfound determination. Clara finally exclaimed, her face lighting up. "We have a suite available for you, Your Honor." "Thank you," he replied, relief cascading over him like the first sun rays breaking through a storm. The bellhop flashed him a knowing smile. "Enjoy your stay, Your Honor, and good luck with your meeting tomorrow," he said, as if they were old friends bound by an unspoken understanding. As David walked into the suite, he marveled at the luxury that surrounded him, the plush carpets, the fine art on the walls, and the view overlooking the bustling city below. He let the door click shut behind him, leaning against it for a moment as he breathed in the soothing atmosphere. But beneath the comfort, a knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. Tomorrow's meeting weighed heavily on him. Lives hung in the balance, people depended on his judgment, his decisions. After splashing cold water on his face in the bathroom, he stared at his reflection in the mirror. "You can do this," he told himself, struggling to conjure the confidence that felt constantly elusive. Dressed in his best suit, he felt a flicker of renewal. He knew that tonight's gathering was more than just a social event. It was a critical juncture where community leaders would come together, and he needed to assert his voice among them. Stepping into the ballroom, he was met with an atmosphere thick with life. The sound of laughter, soft music, and clinking glasses filled the air. He scanned the room, noting the elegantly dressed guests mingling, discussing ideas and sharing stories. Then he spotted Clara again, moving gracefully among the tables, carrying a tray of sparkling drinks. She caught sight of him and waved, her face lit with a smile. "Mr. Turner, thank you for all your help earlier," he replied, feeling genuinely grateful. "I'm just doing my job, but people are excited to see you here. You bring a sense of hope to the community," she said, her sincerity palpable. David felt an unexpected warmth move through him. Perhaps this evening could be a catalyst, uniting all the voices that echoed in his head, the families struggling for justice, the victims seeking closure. As the evening progressed, the mayor took the stage, lively and engaging, his words flowing like a river of enthusiasm. "Tonight we gather not just to celebrate accomplishments, but to listen and understand the needs of our community." The spotlight landed on David and his stomach flipped. He hadn't anticipated this moment, but there he stood under the bright lights with faces staring back at him, waiting. He took a breath, steadying himself against the swell of expectation. "Thank you for having me," he began, feeling the energy of the room pull him forward. As he spoke, he saw faces brighten, nodding in recognition as he illuminated the connections that tied them together. "We are all woven into a tapestry, each story a unique thread." With each word, David could feel the atmosphere shift, a surge of unity as people became more engaged, their hearts opening to what he was saying. He was reminded that even in the weight of authority, he could create connections that mattered. When he stepped down, applause erupted, drowning him in warmth and appreciation. Moments like this reminded him why he had dedicated himself to this work. It was so much more than a title. It was about uplifting the community he served. As the evening progressed, David felt an exhilaration coursing through him. He wandered through the crowd, engaging with small groups that gathered eagerly to talk. As stories flowed, he discovered passion igniting throughout the room. A shared vision for the future began to take shape. Then, amidst the laughter and cheer, he saw the bellhop, Josh, leaning against the bar, watching him with a supportive glimmer in his eye. Josh called out, raising a toast. David chuckled, feeling buoyed by the enthusiasm. "Thank you, Josh. I appreciate your support. I wanted to see how everything unfolded. You're making a difference, and it's inspiring to watch," Josh replied earnestly. "Sometimes it feels like I'm more isolated than I'd like to be. But knowing that I have support helps," David admitted, the vulnerability in his admission surprising even him. "It's a big deal. You're out there on the front lines wearing that title, making decisions that impact real lives. Don't forget that," Josh encouraged, his expression sincere. As the evening flowed, David immersed himself in conversations that felt impactful, insightful, and sometimes even healing. Each interaction reminded him of why he'd chosen this path. It was about connection, understanding, and the unwavering belief that they could make their community better together. Then the energy shifted as Clara appeared again, her vibrant smile dimmed with concern. "David, there's a family who wants to speak with you." David felt a pull in his heart. "They're the Lopez family. They've faced some serious challenges with the justice system and need your guidance," she explained, glancing back to where they sat, a look of apprehension written on their faces. "Of course, let's talk to them," David said, determination settling over him like a cloak. He made his way to where the Lopez family sat, the heavy air thick with worry and hope. "Good evening," he said softly, kneeling to meet their eyes. "I'm David Turner." The mother looked up, her voice barely above a whisper, laden with emotion. "Thank you for meeting with us, Your Honor. We've been struggling." David gestured for them to speak freely. "Please tell me what's on your mind." As they spoke, their story surfaced like a wound laid bare. They had been entangled in a web of misunderstanding and injustice. Each word resonated deeply. The mother's voice trembled, her fear evident. "All we want is for our family to be treated fairly," she implored, tears pooling in her eyes. David felt each word resonate within him. "You are being heard right now. Your story matters," he promised, his voice steady but filled with compassion. "I will make sure your voice is included in any discussions." The way they looked at him, the flicker of hope igniting in their eyes, stirred something profound within David. These moments weren't just paperwork or protocol. They were real lives, real families waiting for the lifeline of understanding. As their conversation ebbed and flowed, David felt himself transformed. The weightiness he carried, the judge's robe, the title gradually morphed into a mantle of responsibility he was eager to embrace. Connection with the Lopez family reminded him of the power of compassion, being there for others in their time of need. After their conversation wrapped up, he gestured for Clara to join them. "Thank you for facilitating this meeting," he said, his eyes reflecting the depth of emotion he felt. Clara nodded, her expression resolute. "I'll make sure their concerns are prioritized." As David returned to the festivities, a renewed sense of purpose hung in the air like the last notes of a beautiful symphony. He moved through the gathering with a lightness in his being, eager to reconnect with Josh and share what had just transpired. Josh asked, curiosity lighting his features. "It was powerful," David replied, voice filled with passion. "Every story matters, and we just have to make sure they are woven into the narrative of justice. You are the voice for change." "You've proven that tonight," Josh encouraged, his eyes sparkling with pride. The night progressed, laughter and music carrying them along. David took in the faces around him. Each one held dreams, hopes, and stories waiting to be heard. He felt a sense of belonging weave through the air, uniting them all in a collective purpose. As the gala began to wind down, David stepped outside the hotel for a breath of fresh air. The rain had stopped, leaving glistening pavement and a refreshing chill in the air. He looked up at the sky, feeling revitalized. This night had awakened something crucial within him. As the weight of responsibility settled comfortably on his shoulders, he realized he could forge connections where once there had been barriers. To be called Your Honor wasn't just a title, it was an invitation to be a part of something much larger. As he turned to re-enter the hotel, he felt the pulse of the city all around him, a heart beating with potential. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, and he would face them, equipped with a stronger spirit and renewed understanding. David Turner wasn't just a judge, he was a champion for those without a voice. And in that realization, he found purpose, a promise to carry the stories he had learned and let them guide his decisions. In that moment, he knew that together they could create a brighter future, woven together by compassion, understanding, and justice. The rain fell heavily against the pavement, the sound echoing like 1,000 tiny drummers on a mission. David Turner stepped through the entrance of the Grand Oak Hotel, shaking off droplets from his coat, each one a reminder of the anxious day he had experienced. The warmth of the lobby embraced him, but he could feel the chill of uncertainty creeping in. All he wanted was to check into his room and settle down before an important meeting in the morning. "Good evening," he said to the receptionist, Clara, offering a tight smile as if it could mask the tension bubbling inside him. She glanced up, her cheerful expression faltering as she typed his name into the computer. "I'm sorry," Mr. David's heart sank. "Cancel, that can't be right." "I'm truly sorry," Clara replied, her voice turning sympathetic yet firm. "The system shows it's been canceled and we are fully booked tonight." "No." His voice rose, raw with fear and frustration. "I need this room." Clara's frustration mirrored his as she glanced at her supervisor, who stood nearby, arms crossed and watching the entire exchange unfold. "I can try to find a place for you," she offered cautiously, but David felt his anger swell. Just as he was about to speak again, a bellhop strolled over, wheeling a cart piled high with luggage. He assessed the situation and stepped closer, his expression curious but engaged. The bellhop asked, his tone calm, cutting through the chaos of David's emotions. "My reservation has been canceled," David said, the fatigue weighing heavily in his voice. The bellhop, tall and composed, raised an eyebrow. "David Turner," he replied, desperate for some spark of recognition. Then, as if a light bulb had gone off in the bellhop's mind, his expression changed entirely. "Your Honor," the title rang out in the air like a thunderclap, instantly altering the atmosphere in the lobby. Clara's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and realization flashing across her face. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Turner." David felt a surge of hope. The way the bellhop had addressed him had shifted everything. He was no longer just a name on a screen. He was a figure of authority, and that title suddenly mattered. "Can we arrange for Mr. the bellhop?" asked Clara, his demeanor commanding respect but laced with camaraderie. Clara replied, fingers flying across the keyboard with newfound urgency and determination. David stood a bit taller, feeling the wave of relief begin to lift the weight off his shoulders. Clara's earlier hesitation seemed to dissolve. Clara finally exclaimed, her face lighting up with genuine eagerness. "We have a suite available for you, Your Honor." "Thank you," he said, gratefulness flooding his voice as he took the key from her hand. The bellhop offered him a supportive smile as he turned to leave the desk area. The bellhop called, the title again wrapping around David like a protective cloak. He entered the suite and marveled at the luxurious surroundings, the soft, ambient light, plush furnishings, and the breathtaking skyline view. He let the door fall shut behind him and leaned against it for a moment, letting the stress of the day wash away like the rain outside. But even in the comfort of the suite, his mind spun. Tomorrow's meeting weighed heavily on him. It wasn't just a gathering, it was a pivotal moment that could change lives. His decisions would affect the community he served, and the pressure loomed like a storm cloud. David splashed cold water on his face in the bathroom, looking at his reflection with a mix of determination and doubt. "You can do this," he whispered, trying to muster the courage he often felt slipping through his fingers. He didn't just carry a title, he carried the hopes and fears of people who needed someone to advocate for them. As he dressed in his finest suit, he felt a flicker of renewed confidence. Tonight was more than just a social event. It was his opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals, make an impact, and stand firm in his commitment to justice. When he stepped back into the ballroom, the air buzzed with excitement. Guests laughed and mingled, the orchestral music swirling around them like a warm embrace. As he made his way through the crowd, he felt the weight of his title blend with a sense of belonging. Suddenly, he spotted Clara among the guests, her cheeks flushed. She was serving drinks, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Mr. Turner," she exclaimed, weaving through the crowd toward him. "Thank you for your help earlier," he said, genuinely appreciative. "It's just my job, but people do look up to you." "You're important to this community," she said, her sincerity piercing through the lingering stress. David felt a warmth swell in his chest. Maybe he could lighten the burden he often felt, extend hope to those who needed it most. The night carried promise, and he was determined to embrace it. As the gala unfolded, he took to mingling among the guests, sharing stories and insights. With each interaction, he sensed a growing unity, a fire igniting among the attendees, all committed to the pursuit of betterment. The conversations flowed easily, filled with tales of triumph and challenges faced. Then came the mayor, stepping onto the stage, his confident posture and booming voice commanding attention. "We are here tonight to celebrate progress and to remind ourselves of the importance of community." As the spotlight shifted to him, David felt his heart racing. This was why he was here. He approached the podium, grounding himself. "Thank you, everyone." He spoke about the role of justice, the obligation to listen, understand, and act. With every word, he poured his heart into the message. Justice was not simply a function of law, it was a lifeblood that fueled the community. He recounted moments from the courtroom, the faces of families, the stories that swirled around him, the weight of each decision impacting lives. As he spoke, the crowd became a tapestry of attentive faces, each one reflecting understanding, hope, and resilience. This was more than just a speech. It was a connection, a shared heartbeat resonating in harmony. When he finished, the applause echoed around him. The warmth of appreciation enveloped him like a comforting wave as he stepped down from the podium, the weight of responsibility mingling with a newfound optimism. Josh called out from the back of the room, a wide grin on his face. David walked over, buoyed by the praise. "Thank you, Josh. It feels good to connect with everyone," he admitted, his eyes surveying the crowd. "You're making waves, man. You're not just a judge. You're a voice for those who can't speak," Josh replied, his sincerity igniting a spark inside David. But just as David felt the night reaching its peak, Clara returned, her expression suddenly serious. His heart quickened. The Martinez family. "They've been through a lot and feel that no one is listening to their story," she explained, glancing toward a quiet table tucked away in the corner. "Absolutely. Let's meet them," David said, his determination surging. As they approached the table, David's mind raced with questions. What kind of struggle had they endured? What did they need from him? "Good evening," he greeted them warmly, kneeling down to meet their eyes. "I'm David Turner." The mother looked up, and her eyes were filled with a potent mix of hope and dread. "Thank you for your time, Your Honor. We're struggling." David's heart tightened. "I'm here to listen." As the family opened up about their ordeal, David sensed the depth of their pain. They spoke of a son caught in a system that seemed to crush him, not just through legal battles, but through societal condemnation. Their pain echoed with palpable desperation. "It feels like our voices have gone unheard," the father added, his gaze piercing. David could feel their frustration wrap around him, heavy and suffocating. "I will do everything in my power to make sure your voice is heard," he promised, the sincerity of his words filling the space between them. As their conversation deepened, David felt a familiar determination growing within him. Their plight stirred something significant, a reminder of why he chose this path. He needed to fight not just for decisions, but for dignity and respect for every person that came through his doors. "Your stories matter," David insisted, nodding thoughtfully. The family smiled, the tension ebbing just a little, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. In that moment, the weight of his title felt lighter. It was no longer just about authority, it was about compassion and connection. After finishing their discussion, David stepped back into the main room, his heart pounding with purpose. The night had transformed him once again, illuminating the realities he faced daily. Each story he carried wasn't just ink on a page, it was a commitment to fight for justice. Spotting Josh again, David walked over, eager to share what had just happened. I just spoke to the Martinez family. They're facing real challenges, but it reminded me of why I'm here, he said, his eyes lit with fervor. You're making their voice count, Josh replied, clapping David on the shoulder. But as David looked out into the crowd, he felt an unsettling wave of uncertainty wash over him. Would he be able to help them in a meaningful way? The weight of responsibility pressed down harder, and for a moment the energy of the gala faded into the background. As the night wore on, David felt both buoyed and burdened. Every conversation deepened his understanding of the community he served, yet the knowledge of the challenges ahead loomed heavier than ever. He was lost in thought when a sudden commotion erupted across the room. David turned to see two men arguing fiercely, voices rising above the orchestra's melody. The tension in the air crackled like static electricity as people's heads turned, eyes wide with concern. One of the men shouted, voice filled with rage. His gesture was aggressive, and something instinctual urged David to step forward. He pushed through the crowd toward the source of the disturbance, adrenaline rushing through his veins. He demanded, his voice steady and authoritative. Before he could reach the men, the situation spiraled. The argument faded into chaos as one man shoved the other back hard. David felt the need to act to defuse the escalating conflict before it erupted into something more dangerous. He called, moving closer. The crowd's murmurs fell to a hush, tension hanging thick in the air. The man who had been shoved glared at the other, fists clenched, anger radiating from him like heat from a flame. David's heart raced. He knew he had to calm the situation, but how? In that moment, he locked eyes with the man. I understand you're upset, he said, trying to keep his voice calm and measured. A flicker of confusion crossed the man's face, but anger still danced in his eyes. You don't get it. Just then, David heard Clara's voice rising from the crowd. He's a judge. The air thickened with expectancy, all eyes on him. If his title meant anything, now was the time to wield it. I'm here to listen, David said, stepping closer. The angry man hesitated, surprise flickering in his eyes at being addressed in such a manner. The other man took a step back, his posture relaxing slightly, although suspicion remained. Tell me what's going on, David urged, his voice steady, leaning into this unexpected moment of crisis. As David focused on resolving the conflict, drenched in a sudden urgency, he never noticed the subtle shift in gravity around him, like the air itself trembled with the weight of unspoken truths. Suddenly, just as the tension began to ease, a loud crash of glass shattered from across the room, drawing everyone's attention. David whirled to see a tall figure standing near the bar, confronting someone else, an unfamiliar man with a wild look in his eyes. The moment accelerated into chaos as if time had fractured. David felt adrenaline surging through him, his instincts urging him to act. Within that instant, everything shifted, and he had to confront the reality that unfolded before him. Caught in the whirlwind of conflict, David's heart raced as the stakes became even higher. He was no longer sure what awaited him, whether he could thicken the bonds of understanding or watch everything crumble before him. But one lingering thought persisted. He was in it for the long haul, ready to stand against whatever storm came next. And as the fragments of glass glimmered dangerously on the floor, he realized one thing: the real battle for justice was just beginning.